In this video, we're going to talk about another graphical tool that helps us visualize probability scenarios. So a Venn diagram is a diagram that shows us the relationship between the entire sample space and individual events within that sample space. And the why is this helps us determine and or probabilities, and it helps us figure out complements. So this is going to help us do probability calculations. So the how, we draw a box representing the sample space. And remember, the sample space is all possible outcomes. And then circles to represent each event. And the circles may overlap if the events are not mutually exclusive, meaning they have outcomes in common, or they might be separate if those events are mutually exclusive. And that gives us important information. We're going to draw one together so we get a feel for how to draw and interpret them. So it says, in a bookstore, the probability that the customer buys a novel is 0.6. The probability that the customer buys a nonfiction book is 0.4. The probability that the customer buys both is 0.2. Draw a Venn diagram representing this situation. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a box. Make my pen a little bit bigger here. That didn't go as planned. Try that again. There we go. So that represents all of the books sold by the bookstore. And then we're going to draw circles for our two events, which are novels and nonfiction books. And we are told in the very last sentence, the probability the customer buys both is 0.2. So there is overlap between purchasers of novels and purchasers of nonfiction. So the circles that I draw for those two events should overlap. So there are my two circles, and I'm going to start labeling stuff. So this is going to be novels. This is going to be nonfiction. And then this is my sample space. And now we're going to start placing some numbers in the table. And the first number I'm going to place is the overlap. I know that customers that buy both, probability is 0.2. So that overlap in between should be 0.2. And this represents the people who buy both. So this is novels and nonfiction. I then need to figure out what goes in the other parts of my picture. And they give us some clues here. So I know that the probability that a customer buys a novel is 0.6. And the probability that represents customers buying novels is the entire novels circle. I know that whole circle should be 0.6. 0.2 of that 0.6 is here. So 0.6 minus 0.2, that leaves 0.4 of the novel purchasers who only buy novels and not nonfiction. A similar thing for the next bubble. So this nonfiction probability is 0.4. So this whole bubble is 0.4, and 0.2 of it is already spoken for, so that leaves 0.2 for this section. And you'll notice if I look at the novel circle, I add those numbers, I get 0.6, which is here. If I look at the nonfiction circle, if I add those two numbers, I get here. That's a good sign. The next thing I want to do is figure out what the probability is that a customer buys neither a novel nor a nonfiction book. I want to know what probability goes in this yellow space outside of the circles. Well, I know that the probability that I end up in the sample space is 1, right? This is all possible outcomes for customers of that store. So to figure that out, I'm going to add up what's inside the circles and subtract it from 1. So off to the side, I'm going to do 1 minus 0.4 minus 0.2 minus 0.2. So 1 minus 0.4 is 0.6, minus 0.2 is 0.4, minus 0.2 is 0.2. So 0.2 goes outside that box. So there is a 0.2 probability that a customer buys something that is not a novel and is also not nonfiction. So we just answered C. The probability that I'm not a novel and I'm not nonfiction is here. So we just did that guy. The probability that I'm novel or nonfiction could be novel or nonfiction or both, meaning it's this number plus this number plus this number. So 0.4 plus 0.2 plus 0.2, which is 0.8. There's an 80% chance that that customer will buy a novel or a nonfiction book. There's a 20% chance they'll buy a book that is neither of those things. And you'll notice that together those make up 1, our entire sample space. All right, if you have any questions on what a Venn diagram looks like or how to assign numbers to sections of the Venn diagram, feel free to send me an email or drop by office hours. Otherwise, I'll see you in our next video.